like Mom said, I was always the good child, the one that, I wanted to make everybody happy, and, I wasn't going to go out and party or go out and do drugs or anything like that. That wasn't me. I was the one who was always in church and always reading my Bible and putting on this Christian play and trying to make people believe that I was happy and make people believe that I was fully in love with God. But if you look deeper than that, you would see that I didn't love God at that time at all. In fact, I really did not like God. Because when I was growing up, I used to get made fun of a lot for being afraid of touching people. I didn't like shaking people's hands. I didn't like hugging people. I didn't like sitting next to people. It just bothered me. It scared me. And people teased me about that for my entire life. And I went to somebody at my church and I said, why do I struggle with this fear? Why can't I just be close to people? And they told me that, they said, oh, don't worry about it. God made you this way for a reason. He just made you special. And I guess in their eyes that was an encouraging thing to say, and their intentions were good. But in my eyes, they were telling me that God made me so scared to hug my parents just because He felt like it. He put this fear in me because He felt like it. And I had this anger towards God because I felt like a freak all the time and I hated it. And they told me that He's the one that put it there. So I blamed Him. But see, everybody else looking in, they didn't know that because all they saw was this girl who was in love with God and she was just worshiping all the time, and people looked up to me spiritually and would ask me questions about God and ask me questions about the Bible, and I would tell them things, and they didn't even know that inside I didn't believe any of it was true. I knew there was a God. I believed in God. I hated God because of what He did to me, or what I thought He did to me, because of what this lady told me at church. And I guess because of that, that hatred toward God, I didn't really care what the church told me. I didn't care what my pastor told me. When I started struggling with depression, I didn't want to go to anybody else. I didn't want to go to my church and talk to them and tell them that I was hurting. I didn't want to go to my parents and tell them that I was hurting. Because I wanted to be the good child that didn't have problems and wasn't a burden. But I held on to this depression, and I let it sit, and I let it grow, and I would water it, and I would just sit in it. And it became very overwhelming. I hated myself. I was very insecure about who I was. I didn't talk to people. I didn't look people in the eye. I isolated myself because I hated who I was. I was very insecure about that, about my fears and about what people would think about me. And that insecurity started to grow as my depression started to grow. And I started cutting myself. And I can't explain to you why I did that, but at the time it just seemed to help, because I was tired of not feeling. Because I didn't feel sad anymore, I didn't feel angry anymore, because I was just sad and angry all the time, that I didn't know what being sad and angry felt like. And I know that sounds kind of confusing, but if you can relate, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I started cutting myself. Maybe I thought that I deserved it or something, I don't know. And I would spend hours locked in my bathroom, and I would just sit on my sink, and I would just start cutting my wrist. And I would take a dry erase marker and I would write on my mirror song lyrics or poems that described what I was going through. And if you walked in, you would clearly be able to see that I was going through something, but because I put on this mask so well, people just thought it was just the music that I liked. They didn't really question it, because everyone thought that I don't struggle with stuff. So on my mirror, I had things like saying how I would rather be dead than be here, how I would love to stop feeling like a burden all the time. And I would have poems about cutting myself and just terrible things. And I don't know, I would just sit there and soak all of this in, because I would look in the mirror and all I would see is these words that defined what I was going through. And I would soak that in and I would let it sit. And instead of going to God like I should have, I went to the world for answers on how to fix this. And they told me that in order to fix this, in order to be happy, you have to be beautiful. But to be beautiful, you have to be size 0. So, knowing that, I developed anorexia and bulimia. And I struggled with it for quite a while. But it didn't seem to work for me. Because the smaller I got, the uglier I felt and the more worthless I felt. And I wasn't happy, it wasn't working. And so it finally got to the point where I just got really suicidal. I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to be a burden to my family anymore. I didn't want people to know. I didn't want to kill myself because I didn't want people to find out that I was depressed, because I didn't want them to hurt from me. So I just held on to it and I just bottled it up inside and let it define who I was. And it got to the point where I finally was going to attempt suicide for the first time. I mean, I had Googled all these ways to kill myself. I had my funeral planned out. I had so many notes written that I would write them and then throw them away, because it didn't express to my family how much I loved them and how sorry I was. And I had all the steps ready. And the night before I was going to attempt to kill myself for the first time, my best friend called me. He talked me into coming to hang out with him at his church. And I didn't really want to go, but I didn't really want to be at the house anymore, so I went. And the service was great, the music was great, everybody there was like cool, and they were all accepting and stuff. But that's not what captured me. There was a man there, and he came up to me, and he said, "You know when you look in the mirror and you say all those terrible things about yourself?" He says, "That's the enemy, that's not God. You know that, right?" And I was a little freaked out, because this is this random stranger that I've never met, and he's coming and he's telling me all these things that I had been doing. And through the course of the night, he would just continue to come to me and say, "You don't have to cry yourself to sleep anymore. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that." And he kept saying, "God's going to rock your world tonight. You better hang on. You better get ready, because God's going to rock your world tonight." And I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. And finally, after service, he came to me and he's like, "I'm going to teach you how to pray over yourself, how to declare who you are." And so he led me in this prayer, and I started praying. And when I did, I felt the true love of God for the first time. And it was like this cold, crisp feeling. I can't even explain it. It was just like fresh air just rushing through my body. And I just felt like everything was going to be okay. I just felt hope for the first time. And I felt love for the first time. And it just completely changed everything. It just felt like this heavy fog that had just been in front of my eyes, where I just couldn't even see anything. It was just gone. It was just like the perfect starry sky that you can see at night, and the cold air. That's all I can describe it as. And for 2 months after that, that night, I was set free from depression. I was set free from insecurity. I was set free from self-harm. I was set free from my eating disorder. And for 2 months, after that, 2 months straight, I saw myself in detail through God's eyes. Through God's eyes, I saw what He saw when He looked at me and would sing all these songs about how we're so wretched and we're so ugly and we're sinners and we're not worthy of God's love and just all this terrible stuff that seems like it's the whole church thing to sing about. But when I saw myself through God's eyes, I didn't see a wretched, ugly sinner. I saw a treasure. I saw a diamond. And when He told me to start my ministry and told me to start sharing my testimony, I didn't want to do that. I don't like sitting on stage in front of a bunch of people talking. Like, I'm shy. I don't like, I'm not a people person, you know? But God told me to do this. And the first time that I spoke, my knees were shaking and my voice was trembling. And I was terrified. And I said, God, you have to do this because I can't get on the stage and talk to these people. I just can't do that. I'm so scared. And I told Him to do it, and He did. And afterwards, after I got off stage, even though my voice was shaking and my legs were shaking, there were so many girls that came up to me, just bawling their eyes out. And I said, that's my story. Or they said, will you pray for me? I've been cutting myself. I don't want to do it anymore. Will you show me this love that you found? And so after seeing all these girls and the impact it had, I knew this is what I had to do for the rest of my life. Because it was so worth it. It's so worth everything I've gone through to see girls find their true identity in Christ. When I got home that night after being set free, I erased my mirror. I took all those terrible things off of it. And the first thing that I wrote is, I am treasured over all the earth. And I wrote all the things that God sees about me. I wrote scriptures that talk about how He adores us, how He loves us so much. I wrote song lyrics and poems about how beautiful I am in God's eyes and how worthy I am. And it completely changed my entire life because I realized that I am here for a reason and I have a purpose and that I am worth it. And I realized that I don't have to be depressed. I don't have to be sick. I don't have to be scared. I don't have to starve myself to feel happy because I'm just so joyful. And one of the things that He told me, the reason that my ministry is called Beauty Defined is because God told me, you are beauty. He says the world has taken beautiful and they have defined it to what they want it to look like. But that's not what it is. You are the definition of beauty. You are highly treasured. If you look it up, that's one of the definitions for it, is excellent and of high value and treasured. And He says that's what you are. You are beauty. You are beauty defined. And you don't have to let the world define who you are. You don't have to let your fear define who you are. Your depression, your sickness, your finances, that does not define who you are because you are a child of the King. And when He looks at you, He doesn't see a wretched sinner who's always letting Him down. He sees His precious treasure. He would do anything for you, and He loves you so much. And if you can just grab onto that and just see yourself through His eyes, I promise you, it'll change everything. Don't let your mistakes be your identity. Don't let your fear define who you are. because you're worth so much more than that. You don't have to be afraid. You just have to believe that He loves you. If any of you guys have any questions or want me to go further on things or just want me to pray with you, I'll stick around and talk to anybody who needs to be talked to. Because it's important that you see who you are in Christ. That's why I'm here. So that you know how treasured you are. I don't want anybody to leave here feeling like they aren't worth it, feeling like God doesn't value them. Because He does. I'm here to show you that. Show you that He loves you. Is there any like prayer counselors or anything that can just come up and just stand here for people who need to come up and pray? I feel like right now there's people who they don't know that they're worth it, and they want to. So I'll be up here, and there's all these people up here. If you want to know your value, don't look for it in the world anymore. Look to the one who created you, who designed you, who before the world began, when He could create anything, things that we can't even begin to imagine. He can do whatever He wants. And what He thinks of is you. He thinks of your personality and your hair and your eyes and the things that are going to make you smile. And He plans this whole world around you because He loves you, because He thought of you. When He could think of anything, He thought of you. He designed you in love because He is love and He created you in His image. So if you want to come up here, you can just start coming. If you feel like you're struggling with one of these things and you want somebody to pray for you, if you want me to pray for you, I will. If you're struggling with any of the things that I went through, I'd be glad to talk to you and help you through that. But if you're struggling with fear or anything, just not knowing how valuable you are, please don't hesitate to come up here.